Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So Republicans today have taken a step. It's a small step, but it's a step nonetheless towards your freedom, actually. Your freedom to die uninsured. Your freedom to die with cancer without having health insurance. I'm always enamored with these arguments that somehow people having access to health care is the same thing as those people losing freedom. It's a comical thing. Now, the thing is, when Republicans are making those arguments, they are both right and they are both wrong. Now, they're trying to get across this idea of they want to associate certain terms with whatever they're doing. They paint it a particular way. Ultimately, that stuff boils down to the subjective view of the world of them saying, well, I'm not technically lying because there is a sliver of what I'm saying that's subjectively true. And they're right. The thing for you to interpret is based upon the real world situation. What would it mean for what they're saying to be true? I find that to be the most interesting point. Meaning, if both of us are praising a situation, we're an observer, we're observing a particular event. Let's say the event is ghastly, unequivocally ghastly. Just from 5 honest people looking at it, it says, oh my God, that is ghastly. Now let's say they're not 5 honest people. Let's say they're 5 politicians. 5 politically bent people. One guy said, yeah, that's ghastly. One guy says, yeah, that's pretty bad. But you get to one guy who says, no, that's freedom. That's freedom. That's what that is. Now, what does that mean for that guy to look at that ghastly thing and say that that's freedom? Now, you can say, well, this guy is lying, but say he's not lying. What would it mean? What would the observer in that situation have to be for that to be true? Now, the reason I'm asking this question, because I am absolutely fascinated with this question. Some of this is differences between. I'll give you an example. Sometimes in one of my other articles, thing where I was looking at the TV, I was like, I can't tell if they're pretending or if they're being earnest. And oftentimes I can't. Now, I think progressives to a certain degree too, just kind of look at them and say, these guys are just being craven. I mean, ultimately they are paid to take a particular view. There's no way they can believe that. How do you know they don't believe that stuff? How do you know that they're saying we're putting healthcare up, and for us, that's freedom? Now, granted, I'm asking the question again. What would it mean for them to say this is freedom? Now, ultimately, they're talking about freedom for the people they're representing. Is it free? Meaning, is it freedom for somebody not to have the healthcare thing? Yeah, there are people who are free of particular taxes, free of particular things or regulations. Yeah, for those people, that is freedom. But we can't presuppose that that everyone's interest in society is the same. It's not. It's not. Meaning, my interests and your interests could vary widely depending upon cultural ideas and even depending upon status. Meaning, if you're a healthcare company and you're putting millions of dollars into these politicians' pockets and these politicians are coming out saying this is freedom, then yes, that guy's not lying. That is freedom for the guy who he's actually representing. That's true. It is not freedom for people who essentially die without health care or die soon or early because they didn't have access to health care, which is in the hundreds. Every year, it's in the hundreds. So, I like picking at this idea of, are these guys just craving and being paid off? Or do they honestly, somewhere deep down, believe that freedom for a person to die without health care, for a person to not be able to afford their health care, is some kind of connotation of freedom? I want to recall at that and say, no, they're just lying because they want to cover their bill. But whether they're lying or not doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, and you say, well, yeah, he's just being paid off. But what is he being paid off to do? We're saying that, so what, the person is being paid off to do a ghastly thing. He's adding his words to it as if it's a good thing. What does words have to do with the fact that he's doing something that's ghastly? Meaning, whether he's coming out and saying, yeah, we're going to preserve freedom by getting rid of these people's health care, or whether he comes out and says, look, my rich backers just don't want to pay for your health care. So what? The act is the same. Just because you're ascribing a certain level of positive emotion to some kind of corporate shill who's saying it's a freedom, him talking about it positively in no way changes what he's actually talking about. And what it takes for the individual to A, do something like that, meaning I'm going to actively go through and get rid of people's health care because people are paying me to do that. Or my donors, my backers are paying me to do that particular thing. Whether he's saying it in these folksy terms of freedom, yes. I guess what I'm getting at is, whether he's lying or not about it being freedom is irrelevant. It's still being done. Meaning that just because he's talking about it in a particular language, it doesn't change at all what he's actually doing. I am kicking healthcare out of those guys' mouths because I don't want to pay for it. Or, hey, I'm giving you guys freedom to not have healthcare. Yes, one sounds horrible. Yes, the other guy sounds like he's lying. But the very act that it sounds like he's lying makes it a little bit better than the guy who's saying it and sounding horrible. If that makes sense. I guess what I'm getting at is, those things are equal. Those things are exactly the same. Now, whether this guy believes that this is freedom, again, that tells you something about that particular individual. The fact that that person will do it, whether he's paid to do it, again, that tells you something about the individual. His reasoning for doing it, meaning if he's lying and saying that, yes, I know this is not freedom, I'm just purely doing this because I'm being paid to do this, that also says something about the individual. The action says more than what the person is saying. You learn a huge amount based upon what the person is saying and the thing that that person is observing and giving those things. You get to learn. It's almost like you get to see the scale of the individual in that sense. Like our appraisal of people is always going to be somewhat off, because I have no way to tangibly look at you and tell you the things that are in you. I can read the things that come out of your mouth, or at the very least that, come out of you, and your appraisal of certain things that I am myself looking at, that in some way gives me a subjective view of how you perceive the world. And ultimately how you function in the world. And even a certain perspective of what you're made up as. Which is weird, because I don't necessarily even know what that means. Like, you have an appraisal of somebody. It's like, my appraisal of Tom Perez is pretty gruesome. That's my appraisal, but I don't necessarily know what that means. It's almost like you're ascribing certain adjectives to the person, but it goes beyond adjectives. There's a certain feeling associated with the individual who you're observing. It's weird. It's bizarre. All I'm getting at is this particular individual, or these people who are passing these bills, I'm fascinated by the things that they use to cover themselves for these things. Because whether they realize it or not, the words that they're using to cover themselves, for those words to be true, tells a hell of a lot about the individual who's saying them. Dying without healthcare, it's not freedom. Or at the very least, you have to ask the question of freedom for whom and freedom for what? Do you honestly believe that these guys are passing a bill to dumb down healthcare even further than what Obamacare was? They're taking their tax cuts. They're pulling money out the system. They're even getting rid of certain mandates that would force people to be in the system itself, allowing a health company to raise costs on people if those people are outside of the system. So he's still putting in an incentive structure for the company essentially to rape over the people who they're already raping over in their health care. What does it mean for a person? What is a person made up with? To look at that, to understand that that's what's taking place. Rates are already skyrocketing. You still have millions of people who don't have access to health care. People in this country die, hundreds every year, because they don't have basic access to healthcare. And these guys are looking at them and said, you know what, the fact that these guys have healthcare is somewhat of a problem, because it's taking away money from the people who are putting money in our pockets. What is the individual at that point? What is your perspective of the individual who looks at that situation and says, yes, we have the resources to take care of everybody. Yes, we can afford to do that. But no, it is more important for these guys who have more money than they're worth, more money than they deserve, and got that money off of exploiting labor in the country. Those guys have a much better right to keep their inanimate object of cash than to actually apply it to the health care of the individual that's in that particular country. And that was exploited by those guys who was making all that money in the first place. That is an amazing thing. That is our politics. Those are the guys who are in office. Those are the perspectives that these guys have. I care about what they're doing. I don't care about what they're saying. I care about what they're saying to the degree that it helps me to understand the quality of the individual who's doing those things. That is my only way to appraise what they're doing. Yes, you can say he's lying about this. I would say you don't know if he's lying about this. Ultimately, if this guy could earnestly believe that this is freedom, he may or may not. He could just be craving and lying. I would hope that he's craving and lying. My bias says he's craving and lying. But it's very possible that he's just a sadistic asshole. And I'm saying he because there was one particular guy who was calling this freedom in one of the articles I was reading on it. So, I'll leave it at that. Look, I have no love for Obamacare. It doesn't go far enough. It doesn't cover everybody. And we have this ridiculous situation where you have all these people who are leftists defending a right-wing healthcare plan purely because it's the only crumb that they were able to get, or the main crumb that they were able to get in the last administration. I find that absurd. I find that absurd. And ultimately, it makes me not necessarily want to be up in arms about Obamacare getting taken down. Ultimately, these guys are going to hurt if they hurt other people, particularly their own base. So, look, I don't want these people to lose their health care, so you need to understand me first. But two, I do recognize that it doesn't go far enough. And I can kind of see how losing a battle in that case can win you the war to single payer. Starts off looking like this, where these guys are essentially making changes to somebody's policy, and those supporters were Trump supporters who had health care at one point, and their bill go up $1,000 bucks. I don't give a shit how much they like Trump. If their health care rates are spiking at some ridiculous rate, they're going to be pissed that it's directly hitting their pockets. Those people may be ignorant about taxes and everything else, and even being scammed by their party. What they will not be ignorant about is money that is flying out of their pockets for something that they had, and now something that they no longer have, or have in good measure. So, yeah, this could, backfire. This could backfire. So, I'm not getting up in arms about them getting rid of Obamacare. I'm hard-pressed to believe they're going to be able to do it, but who knows? In the Senate, he may be able to pull some Republicans off only for their own political well-being at that point. They've kept talking about killing Obamacare for so long that they may actually have to do it just because they've been saying they're going to do it. Not necessarily because they want to do it. They were a dog chasing a car. They assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that race. They didn't realize they were going to be in this situation where they would have to actually pull the trigger and get rid of it. So, alright guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, subscribe, like, and you can always support the work through Patreon.